Marketers are fascinated with big words that are meaningless and acronyms. And
I find that to be
honestly,
true. I find that to be true.
And we get so full of ourselves that
Right.
our folks have no clue what we're trying to do. So, you know, it was done in the cave person time, keep it simple, stupid. You know, the more that you can make it clear, concise,
Right.
the more that you can paint a picture
Right.
that's easy to see and understand, the more effective you'll be.
Today, I'd like to introduce you to Mark Gambill. Mark is a FSU graduate of 1984. He's a Pike Pi Kappa Alpha fraternity member, which has great lore in Seminole Boosters history. His professional career, he spent time as a Fortune 500 CMO. He also took an international company public, which he was a founding partner. So I'd just like to welcome Mark today.
Thank you.
Mark, great to see you. So obviously the topic of this entire podcast is about leadership, professional development. So do you think people are born as a leader, or can people develop into being a great leader?
You know, I took classes. I read books. I know it sounds boring, but those things are helpful because
Right.
I will steal from anyone if I see a good idea or a way
Right.
someone comported themselves or how they handled a situation. Network.
Right.
You know, I'm lazy by nature, but I force myself to go and network. It's critical because you can learn so many different things.
Right.
Volunteer. You know, if you're in a job, get out of your comfort zone.
Right.
And it's not easy. But those types of things are extremely helpful in terms of developing leadership traits, because
Right.
the more you see, the more you understand, the more you experience, the more you know.
Right.
And all of those things are really important.
Yeah.
You know, it's what's the classic saying? You never make a shot if you don't take it, or something like
Right,
that.
right.
And you have to, and
Right.
it's okay to fail.
Right.
And that's probably the biggest component of leadership. You got to fail a bunch to understand how to succeed.
I think I know quite a few basketball players that probably live by that philosophy. Yeah, they just kept shooting. So what do you mean by putting yourself in uncomfortable situations?
Well, one of the things I had no knowledge of was the financial ledger and the balance sheets. And yet I found myself more and more situations where I was being asked ROI and all
Right.
kinds of aspects and ratios and funnel analysis and regression analytics and all
Right.
those kinds of things. It was so uncomfortable for me because
Right.
numbers.
You're thinking, I'm a marketing guy.
Yeah,
this
I
is
don't
not
need
my
to do
thing.
that. Yeah,
Right.
it's all emotion and
Right.
and you know, those kinds of things. But that basis, and this was early on,
Right.
really became, I think, the foundation for why I was able to achieve in the roles I had, is because I understood the power of data
Right.
and the power of information, and to be able to present that and show people the art of the possible.
Right.
You know, those are powerful equations. So do things where you're just not comfortable.
Right.
You know, the easiest example is people that do public speaking.
Right.
So many people freak out at that.
Right.
Do it, and then you'll just be as comfortable as you can be.
That's right. Yeah, I think there's many examples of basically whatever you are good at, try to go put yourself in situations to be the opposite. So, for example, a friend of mine who doesn't like to sell, volunteered with his daughter to sell Girl Scout cookies. Those type things, just to put themselves out there. So.
Yeah, and you know, when I got out of college, and I'm sure it's true for so many, you're a young professional in whatever you do, and you're just trying to find your way. And it's always important to remember, you don't go from 0 to 100.
Right.
So be reasonable with yourself.
Right.
Place realistic expectations of things you want to accomplish. So let's say over the next 60 days, I am going to read a book on leadership.
Right.
Over the next 60 days, I'm going to attend a networking function. And understand those.
Yeah.
And then kind of document what you learned from it as you go.
So you're describing right now what, like goals. Do you think that setting goals for yourself, but not putting a timeline on yourself is important, or do those go hand in hand?
I think if you make them reasonable, there's no problem in putting a time box on it, and always evaluate. Sometimes you may not achieve it.
Right.
It's okay, why didn't I achieve it?
Right.
And that personal evaluation, it kind of goes back to understanding who you are and being comfortable about that.
Right.
But you have to push yourself to drive toward an outcome.
Right.
Because it's not just going to happen. What were those shows in the 60s? My dad used to tell me that he had a crush on Jeannie from I Dream of Jeannie.
I Dream of Jeannie. Okay.
Yeah. nobody's blinking their eyes and making it happen for you. You have to put in the effort. And, you know, the last saying that my dad said to me, which I've always tried to remember, and I've tried to convey that to people as well, is nothing is easy, but anything is possible.
Yeah, that's very true. That's great. So now that you've retired, Mark, you got some time on your hands. What's it like for you being goal-oriented, action-oriented, measuring everything, as you said earlier? What's it like for you today?
Well, I'll be honest with you, it was weird. I decided to retire early, and I thought, whoo-hoo, this is going to be great. But I found myself still stressing on Sunday nights, okay, what is it I need to prepare for and get done on Monday? And so it is a little bit of a transitional period. But now I set goals for things like my handicap, and that sounds terrible, but you know, trying to improve in that aspect, doing what I can to help my children. You know, so I set little goals. We recently purchased another home up in Maine, and just goals of things that we need to get accomplished. And so, you know, God bless my wife, she's up there handling it right now while I'm down here having fun. So what can I do here at our house here to kind of help get everything organized so when she comes, she doesn't have to do anything. So yeah, I think it's important, because otherwise you don't want to, you know, your brain to start getting all squishy. That's a technical term. That's a marketing term.
Squishy is a marketing term. But I think it points out that leadership, there's not a time, place, there's not an industry that leadership exists. It's in our personal lives, it's everywhere. I mean, that sounds like that's what you're experiencing right now. As you're in retirement, you're still leading.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the things that we've talked about since we were young. It's having principles, it's having values, and living your life as best you can according to those. Look, none of us are perfect, and life is not a Disney movie. You know, we all will make mistakes, we will fall, but man, it's such an incredible journey. Embrace the failures as well as the successes, and just learn from it and go forward. And that's what leadership is, being who you are and being the best of who you are, and trying to apply the best of who you are in whatever context, a business setting or a personal setting.
Yeah, and I think there's so many examples in life from a leadership perspective of people who've tried and maybe failed, that they've learned more in those experiences than when they were successful. So I'm glad you really brought that up.
Yeah, they will all say that, because you do. Because you know, your head's hurting, you're like, what the heck did I do wrong? And you feel sorry for yourself. But once you get through that crap, then you just go and say, okay, what did I not do to achieve the outcome I was hoping for? And our ability to be able to do that is just, you're going to continue to grow as a leader, because that is leadership, is looking within yourself and understanding those things and being able to adapt from it and grow from it.
One of the things I've heard people ask me before, or you know, comment on, is about silence and about quiet, and the importance of finding time to quieten the noise and to be able to be okay being alone, to think and plan. Did you set aside time to do that, or did you do it on a drive home, or how did you handle that?
I went for a 5-mile run every morning at
well, then there's that 5-mile run.
Yeah, 4 a.m.-ish, 4:30-ish, and it is amazing clarity of thought, clarity of vision, clarity of purpose that you achieve on those runs. And for me, that's what worked for me, is that I did that. And the other thing that I forgot to mention that I think is really important as a leader, you have to listen louder. What does everybody say to you when they do all the talking in a conversation? They come back and say, man, that was a great conversation. Everybody wants to be the center point, the life of the party. Your ability to listen and not be the star of the chat will pay tremendous dividends, because you make the people feel good about interacting with you. You learn a lot more. And when you speak, your words have more meaning and impact.
Where was your first introduction to leadership?
Well, I don't know that you actually understand that you've been introduced to leadership, because when you're a kid, so hopefully your parents give you a set of values and they pound them into you, so you learn to live with that. But then you start doing things just by virtue of the activities you're involved in. So for me, it was sports. I lived, breathed, and died to play sports. I played baseball, basketball, and football. And I was a bit of a psychotic, because I didn't want to lose at anything. So extremely competitive, which meant I was going to work harder than anyone. And that kind of manifested itself in terms of leadership, because I was named captain for all 3 teams. And I'm sure the reason why is that I just refused to lose, and I carried that mindset into what we were doing. So, without knowing it, that's probably the first time that I was actually doing something that would be termed leading or leadership.
Absolutely. Along your journey, I'm sure you've had some mentors that have helped you. Kind of, how did you find them? Did they find you? And how did those evolve? And who were they?
Yeah, I think it's who you're interacting with initially. So my first job out of college was for someone who went to FSU. Honestly, I think that's why I got the job, because I was the least qualified. And here's the other caveat. I couldn't get a job in marketing right out of school. So I went into sales. And, I didn't know anything about sales. He liked my passion. And so he mentored me on things to understand, things to do. And I would go to him with questions and queries. And the company that I worked for ran into a little bit of financial trouble. And he came to the sales team. He said, look, I'm only going to be able to keep a couple of you. And I'm going to make this fair. It's so for the next 30 days, whoever sells the most will stay. And he made it completely non-emotional. Which is a leadership quality. And so I had one of two options, right? I either had to go do it or just start looking for another job. Well, I'm too stupid or pig-headed not to go do it. So I went and did it. And I really valued the relationship that I had with him. I worked for that company for a number of years, and I was able to learn a lot from him. And his name was Jim Shanks.
Oh, cool.
So that was great. And then along the way, there were people that really helped me. In situations where I may not have had the right experience. I got my first job as a CMO, and the way that I got that was I took initiative at the company where I was. I did something that never had been done before. I took it to a certification group nationally. They endorsed it, and it caught the attention of many people. When that happens in the business world, you get invited to speak at a lot of events. So from doing that, I started speaking to different marketing groups about techniques, ideas, and what I did. One of the folks in attendance was the CFO of a company that had just gone public, and they were looking for a CMO. And so lo and behold, at the age of 29, I was a CMO, and I was completely unqualified. But again, I was taking the attributes that I had and had learned along the way in terms of classical training and things like that, and all the outside courses that I took to take on this role. Well, my peer, who was the chief operating officer, was a former naval vet. And he just did not like the idea of this young guy being his peer. So he would try and embarrass me in front of everyone whenever he could. And he'd have these confrontations in a hallway. And the first time I didn't know how to react, so I'm a quiet person by nature, I just kind of walked away. But there was a gentleman, his name was Bill Hollis, and he was a part of a company we had acquired. And he basically was just working out the string of you stay with the company and you get this payout. I told him, I am going to go and I'm going to embarrass that guy in front of everyone. I'm going to do this and that. I was ticked off. And he said, well, you could do that. He said, but that's not going to get you anywhere. He said, think about this. He said, what if you make him part of the solution? So instead of going and fussing at him, go back to him and say, well, you may have some points. So what can we do together to figure out what we need to do to make this work more efficiently and effectively? And what a powerful leadership lesson that he gave me, because I was all ticked off and I wanted to fist fight verbally. And he said, no, bring him into it so he has no choice but to be part of the solution. So really strong leaders, and Bill was one of those individuals, and he is a mentor, are able to tell you something that just, it's so logical, you don't see it.
That's right.
But he gave it to me in the right way. He let me get through all my spit and vinegar. And it ended up working out, and I ended up working very effectively with this COO once we got through that gate.
That's great.
So those were a couple of examples of, I think, where leadership lessons were given to me. And, I may run my head into the wall and make many mistakes, but I do learn. And I always will take something back and say, how can I use that going forward? And so that was a great example of something.
Yeah, it's amazing how the human nature in all of us wants to take over in response to situations. So it's great to have someone that can direct you. I've heard the phrase my entire career about lead from where you sit. So from your perspective, what does that mean to you as it relates to leadership?
Well, you don't have to be in charge of something to be a leader. I mean, for those of us who have families, and we all do, whether it's brothers and sisters or children, you have an opportunity to lead every day. And, I probably didn't grasp the meaning of that until you got your first managerial job or when you have a child, because everything changes. You know, it's funny, I've managed a lot of people over my business career, and they all say, I want to be a manager. And I really just want to say to them, do you really want to do that? Because do you really know what that means?
Right.
But ultimately, I think that leadership is about having a core set of principles and being consistent when you apply those principles. You know, there are many things you can do as a leader, and I can give you some examples, but it's really important that you are consistent. When you are consistent as an individual, whether in personal or professional settings, it's going to benefit everyone involved. Because you can't play favorites. I can't be nicer to you than I am to someone else just because you're a super important person.
Right.
It's how you treat everyone, how you treat situations that occur, and if you're consistent about it, you know, people pay attention to that.
So would you say that consistency is one of the key components of leadership?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that a couple that I always try to live by, the first one I would say is to be actively engaged. You know, I worked at a company that was very hierarchical, and all the executives were on the 14th floor. I'm not going to name the company.
Right.
And people hated coming up to the 14th floor because, you know, it was like, go see the gods. And that was just totally inappropriate. So when I say lead by being engaged, is I would go down to, my team was on the 6th and 7th floor, and we would have meetings there. We would hang out. I'd go to their cubicle, and we would just talk. And I think that people appreciate that because you want people to respect you, but in the right way.
Right.
So I think that leading by active engagement is important. I think you have to understand that there's a difference between emotion and passion. Emotion gets you in trouble. And too often there are leaders who let the enormity of the moment get in their way of what they were trying to accomplish. And then you lose that ability to be passionate. And the last one, and these are in no particular order, but I think this one is critical, is you have to create an environment where people can succeed or fail. You have to give them enough space to be able to take ownership of whatever it is you want them to do. And you inspect what you expect, but let them take ownership of it, because a funny thing happens is it becomes their project and they want to make it work. They also feel better about themselves because they are making the decisions. You know, you're there as giving them feedback. And that's really hard for a lot of people to do because they just say, go do this, 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 and this, and you'll be successful. But they're not learning anything. And, you know, of course I made all those mistakes, but once I understood that, it's extremely powerful because your team will respond to that so much more effectively than if you just said, you know, you need to do this. Explain to them, here's what we're trying to accomplish. These are the outcomes we're trying to get to. Help me get there. And you ask them the right questions so they go away and think about it.
It's amazing. The one thing I love about my job is meeting different people from different walks of life. Everybody's got a different story and a different path. Even sitting here talking to you today, I've learned something. And I think for us, just directly, the answer for me, the emotion and passion, especially in what we do, there's a fine line there. So I really appreciate you touching on that. So tell me, the people that you've led or the people that you've reported to, do you still stay in touch with those folks?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I've been very fortunate to have some really strong people in my leadership teams, and they're always trying to improve their careers, and so they call me. Just say, hey, here's a situation I have right now. Remember when we did this? How did you handle that? And because they want to understand it from a leader's standpoint versus the subordinate. Just had a phone call yesterday with someone who worked for me a couple of companies ago, and same thing. He wants to become a CMO. And so he was like, hey, do you have some time? I said, yeah, man, I always have time for you, because he helped me succeed in my career. And I think it's really important to stay engaged. That's one of the things that I really take get a lot of enjoyment out of. It's just every once in a while we talk shop. You know, and hopefully cool. I'm helping them, and you know, it gives me a chance to kind of think about things still and not get old and, you know. That's
hilarious. So do you have any former people that you worked with that say reported to you that now they'll say, now I know what you were talking about, but before I didn't? So give me an example of that.
Well, a gentleman who used to work for me, his name was Adam Jaffe. And Adam is probably one of the smartest people I've ever had work for me. But he let his emotions get in the way of clarity. And Adam did not understand the golden rule of take a step away. He would just barge straight through a door. And because he put so much effort into everything he did,
Right.
he was extremely passionate about suggesting it is the right way.
Right.
So, one of the things that I really worked hard on with him was, hey, you know what? Just step aside, take your ideas around, get some feedback, go back, kind of channel that, think it through, and then say, okay, what do I need to tweak here for this? Right. And he's someone who I think really shows a great appreciation for kind of take a deep breath. We used to have this saying, and I had little laminated cards made. It said, do great work, move mountains, take a breath, do it again.
Yeah.
And, for Adam, it was all about, he discovered, he created, and he wanted to execute. So the four pillars are discover, create, execute, measure in marketing. It's kind of a cycle.
Yeah.
Adam would jump from discover to execute. And measure sometimes got left out of the way.
Right.
So for him, it was a great chance for me to kind of tell him to think more holistically and on multiple levels, not just what you see.
Right.
And that's a problem that a lot of folks will learn through time is you only see what you see.
Right.
But it's really important to be intellectually curious and just kind of say, give it what the dog gives to you. Give it the kind of, maybe there's a different way.
Yeah. I read a book by Patrick Lencioni where he talks about the leader's role is to provide clarity and then continually reinforce clarity, and then you start back at the beginning, kind of like you talked about earlier. Do you find that to be true in terms of clarity?
Yes, because here's what also I found in marketing. Marketers are fascinated with big words that are meaningless and acronyms. And
I find that to be
honestly,
true. I find that to be true.
And we get so full of ourselves that
Right.
our folks have no clue what we're trying to do. So, it was done in the cave person time, keep it simple, stupid. The more that you can make it clear, concise,
Right.
the more that you can paint a picture
Right.
that's easy to see and understand, the more effective you'll be and the more effective your team will be.
That's right. So in today's world and in today's environment, what do you see out there from an employee standpoint? What's the biggest obstacle you see today from a leader's perspective?
Yeah, I'll go back to something my dad used to say. So my dad was one of those classic people that liked to take me into his office at home and give me world wisdom.
Oh boy,
But
I'm
when
sure
you're-
you love that.
Well, when you're 12 and 13, it's like, seriously?
Right.
But one of the things he said stuck with me, and he didn't make any of this up, but he used it. He said two things that I thought were extremely powerful, and I don't know that that's the case today. The first one was, if you do what you've always done, you'll be what you've always been.
Right.
And I think what he was alluding to, I know, is that if you want to be average, fine, go do it.
Right.
And a lot of people today, I don't know that they have that hunger, maybe as much as somebody like me when I was growing up. And there are many, but I think as a general statement,
Right.
that's a risk.
Right.
And the second one is probably something that affects all of us. And my dad said it, and again, I don't think he made it up. He said, you might as well like yourself and understand yourself, because just think of how much time you're going to spend with you.
That's a very good point.
And I was like, well, that's just stupid. That makes no sense.
Right.
But the more I understood it, and I think it really tied into starting to learn who you are here at Florida State, I started to more better understand who I was. And I think that's a challenge with maybe new folks entering into the workforce today. You run the risk of trying to be something that people perceive you to be versus who you are. And if you do that, then you don't surround yourself with complementary pieces.
Right.
Because if I understand, okay, I'm lazy by nature, so I have to force myself to do stuff. I want somebody around me that's always pushing me to
Right.
do that.
That's right.
And I think that those are some dynamics, along with maybe instant gratification,
Right.
that we're seeing in the workforce today that
Right.
maybe wasn't as prevalent. Pick a time to go
Right.
back to.
Yeah, I think that, in terms of surrounding yourself with opposites is what I've always heard. Like, if you're good at this, don't hire that. Did you do that? Did you do that throughout your career?
Yeah, I married it, which is probably the greatest leadership move I ever made, is
Right.
convincing her to marry me, because she's opposite in so many ways of what I do. And you learn that as well as in business as well.
Right.
But I knew what I knew, and I know that I was a smart guy. I knew a lot about a lot of things, but I could only go so deep. I needed the experts. And I also wanted people to tell me when I was full of it, because I was a very confident person throughout my business career.
Right.
And sometimes your ego will get in the way of clarity.
Right.
And it's important to have people that will smack your ego upside the head and say, nah, that's stupid.
Right. Yeah, I think it's important that, and I hope, like, the people that I work with, I try to talk to them all the time about, hey, don't give me the answer you think I want to hear. I want the truth. Yep. Sometimes it's hard, but it's also hard.
Kind of like when we met?
That's right. That's exactly right. And I think we had that conversation.
We did have that conversation.
I think you're, again, direct, which I appreciated. And that's really what's led to us being able to have conversations about not just the fun things, but the tough things when those things occur. So tell me, since you've left Florida State, your connection to Florida State, how did you get involved in Seminole Boosters and with Florida State overall?
Well, I wish I knew then what I know now. Because if you step back and think about it, within the Boosters, there is so much business knowledge. I mean, think about it. Oh, yeah. Successful people that have gone and started their own companies, they've been successful executives or whatever the role that they chose. And they all have life experiences and work experiences. I wish I would have known about or thought about that then. And I think that's an untapped opportunity that we should all be aware of.
Right. I'm listening to that. I got you.
Yeah, hint, hint. I have a group, we call ourselves the 14. It's not very original, I know, maybe I need to brand it. But it's 14 of us that went to college together. We talk every day on a chat. But I can go to each one of those folks and I can say, hey, here's a situation. What do you think?
Right.
Because they all have become successful in their own way.
Right.
And they can give me that feedback.
Right.
And so I started, but it's not the answer to your question, I apologize, but I think it's important to point that out. And I think that people need to take advantage of that environment and the opportunity sitting right in front of them with the Boosters. Right. Once I got out of school, I did grad work, I did all those things. And when I started becoming successful, I started to realize what are the things that helped make me successful. And Florida State was a big part of that.
Right.
I really came here a green kid.
Right.
And it really helped shape me. And so you want to be re-engaged. I always had a passion for the school. My son ended up going to Florida State. He was a Pike.
Right.
As well.
Right. I'm not surprised.
But so many good things have come through my relationship with the school. And I just wanted to be in a position to be more involved, to do more, to be engaged. And obviously Boosters is a great vehicle to help me do that.
Right.
And so, I love this school. We go through the highs and lows, but it doesn't matter whether we have, let's just use football as an example. It doesn't matter whether we have an undefeated season or a tough season. I mean, the pride, the tradition, what you get from here doesn't change.
Right.
Records will, but.
Yeah, I would say that the text chain or the group that you have, the 14, I think is a symbol of that. And I hear that a lot when I visit with folks. As I mentioned earlier, I love what I do every day, getting to meet different people and hearing different people's stories, because they're great leaders all across Florida State University, Seminole Boosters for sure. But the way that they stay connected with each other, it's beyond sports. It's about life. And like you said, I mean, you can give them any problem and everybody's giving you advice.
And I've always been of the school of thought. My mom's side of the family was Italian, and my grandmother was as Catholic can be, and she would drag me to Mass every Sunday. But she instilled in me some things that about loyalty, about giving back to where you gained.
Right.
And for me personally, Florida State really helped shape who I was and am, and I value that connection. Yeah. And so my friends, I just think that's so unique and so special that we talk like we're still 19, 20, 21 years old. So I won't mention the things we talk about sometimes, but they're also, like I said, there's successful lawyers in there, successful business owners, and I can go to them with questions, and they can come back to me.
Well, Mark, I appreciate your time today on our first podcast of leadership and professional development. I appreciate your time and your experience today, so I hope that you can join us again, but thank you for everything.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.